Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. This happened when I was home alone as a kid. It was summertime, and I was home during summer break. Both my parents were at work, and I think I was about 12 years old. I have an older brother, and he went to one of his friends' houses that day. When I was home alone, I would just hang out and do whatever. Usually, I would go on the computer we had and play Minecraft or something like that. It was probably sometime in the early afternoon, and I had been on the computer in the living room for a while. I moved into the kitchen to get something to eat. The kitchen was at the back of the house, and we lived in a split level. I should mention that the neighborhood was pretty average and a little bit on the quieter side. As I was standing in the kitchen, I saw something out the window. At first, I just barely noticed movement, but it looked like somebody was walking by. I moved over to another window to see better, and that's when I saw a man walking towards the back of the house. He was wearing a sort of construction vest and had a hat on. I realized that it must be the meter reader. I remembered that they came around every so often to our house, so I calmed down almost immediately. I had been a little worried when I first saw a guy walking into our backyard. He went to the very back of our house, near one of the basement windows, and I went back to finding some food in the kitchen. After I had been in the kitchen for about 5 minutes, I looked over and noticed that the guy was still there. Usually, they would come and go really quickly, staying for maybe a minute at most. I went back into the living room to go back on the computer, but a short time later, I had a feeling that I should get up and make sure that the man was gone. Maybe it was because I was home alone and still a kid, so I was feeling a little paranoid. I carefully walked back over to the window and could see that the man was actually still there. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't tell exactly what he was doing because I could only see part of him from my angle, which was higher up than where he was. He seemed to be doing something near the basement window, but I couldn't tell what exactly. I thought about going downstairs to look out of that window, but I knew that the man would see me right away if I did. I walked over to another window upstairs, which had a better angle, but I had to be careful so the guy wouldn't see me. Unfortunately, I messed up as I was walking over. I accidentally hit a can that was near the edge of the kitchen counter. It fell onto the ground with a loud noise. The next thing I knew, I saw the man quickly walking away. He moved to the side of the house, and I rushed to the front to watch him casually walking down the street until I could no longer see him. He seemed really suspicious to me. I started questioning whether he was even a meter reader at all. Why would he leave so suddenly like that? For the most part, though, I was just happy that he was gone. I went back to the computer and stayed there until my brother and parents came home. When they did, I didn't even think to tell them about the guy. I figured he was gone for good. My brother's bedroom, as well as mine, were in the basement, while my parents' bedroom was upstairs. Since it was summertime, we were allowed to stay up as late as we wanted. I remember that on this night, my parents went to bed, and my brother went down to his bedroom. I stayed up and was on the computer. All of the lights in the house were off, except for a small lamp in the living room near me. I stayed on the computer until I got really tired, which was probably around 1 a.m. Then I turned off the lamp and went downstairs to go to bed. When I got downstairs, I had to walk past a small living room in the basement to get to my bedroom. As I was walking by, I happened to see something in the window. The man was back. I could only see the figure of a man, but I guessed who it was. This was the same window he had been at earlier in the day. I then heard noises coming from the window, like someone was trying to open it. I was suddenly really afraid. It was really dark down there, but I was close to a light switch and turned it on. The whole room lit up, and I could no longer see the man very well. I heard some noise from right outside the window, and then it sounded like he was running away. I ran upstairs to my parents' bedroom, knocked on their door, and yelled for them to wake up. About a minute later, my dad came out, asking what was going on. By the time I explained everything, the man was long gone. My dad went outside and inspected the house. He found that the back window, the one the man had been messing with, had quite a bit of damage. It had almost come off, like the man had been trying to remove it and get inside. He had been really close to succeeding. After that night, the man never came back. I remember being really scared for a while that he would, so I slept upstairs on the couch because I felt safer there. Luckily, he never did return. This happened back when I was in college. During the summers, I lived at home with my parents in their house. I had almost the entire basement to myself, and they rarely went down there. It was great because there was a big TV in the basement, along with my bedroom and a bathroom. It was really nice to have all that space. After finishing my finals and packing up my stuff from the college dorm, I drove home. When I arrived at my parents' house, they happened to be out and told me they'd be back in a few hours. That meant I was home alone. I had my own house key, so I let myself in. I spent the first part of the evening unpacking my stuff and putting some of it into storage in the basement. After a while, I settled in the main room and started watching TV. It was then that I thought I heard a noise coming from my bedroom. I hadn't been in there yet, and the door was still closed. I didn't know what it could be, but I wasn't scared or anything. Casually, I got up and walked over to the bedroom door. When I opened it, I heard the sound of the closet door closing. It was slightly out of my view, but when I looked over, the closet door was completely shut. Suddenly, I started to feel a little concerned. Only a person could close the door like that, and I was supposed to be home alone. I thought about going over and opening the closet door, but decided not to. Instead, I turned around and left the room, no longer wanting to be downstairs. I went up to the living room upstairs. About 30 minutes passed without anything happening. I was just watching TV and relaxing on the couch. Out of nowhere, I heard the sound of someone walking up the staircase. I knew it wasn't my parents, because they hadn't come home yet. I looked over at the stairs, but the person wasn't in view yet. Then I saw a man start to come into sight, walking up the stairs toward me. This guy looked a little older than me, with a beard and long hair. He seemed like he was on some kind of drug or something. As he approached, I quickly stood up, backed away, and asked him who he was. He didn't say anything, he just kept walking closer. I told him he needed to leave or I was going to call the police. The guy still didn't say anything and kept getting closer. I was backing up as far as I could, about to reach the wall. He kept approaching. I managed to run to the side and ended up in the back corner of the house. The guy continued to come toward me, then suddenly, he started to charge. It was terrifying. When he lunged at me, I jumped out of the way. He managed to grab part of my leg, and I fell to the ground. He fell too. I got back to my feet before he did and ran down the stairs as quickly as I could. I rushed to the front door, opened it, and bolted out of the house. The crazy guy followed me, but a little later. I sprinted down the street, yelling at him to stay away from me. Eventually, he stopped chasing me and wandered off into someone else's yard. Finally, I was able to calm down enough to call 911. By the time the police arrived, I didn't know where the guy had gone. I walked back to the house and waited in the front yard. About 15 minutes later, the police found him. He had gone and hidden in someone's backyard, and they called the police. Since the officers were already on my street, they quickly picked him up. I'm really not sure how he got into my parents' house or how long he had been there. I'm guessing he got in shortly after they left. But knowing that he was there the entire time that really creeps me out. I remember last year, I came home after being out of town for a few days on a work trip. I live in a small apartment in the city, just one bedroom, a living room, a kitchen, and 1.5 bathrooms. Each room has a decent amount of space. It was night when I returned, and after getting inside, I started to unpack. Normally, my apartment is pretty neat, but I had left in a rush. I had meant to wash one of my comforters, and it was lying in the corner of my bedroom. The other comforter was still on my bed. As I was unpacking in my bedroom, I was sorting my clothes, some into the hamper, some back into drawers. While doing this, I was sure I saw the comforter in the corner move. I hadn't been looking directly at it when it happened, so I stopped and stared at it. I was sure I'd seen it shift, even just a little. This was really weird, there was no way it could move on its own. I watched it for probably a minute, but it stayed completely still. Feeling a bit unsettled, I got up and left the room. I paced around in my living room, trying to make sense of what I thought I'd seen. After a few minutes, I went back into my bedroom and checked the comforter again. It was perfectly still. I looked at it for a while, but it didn't move. I left the room again, now wondering if I was just tired and imagining things. I went into my half bathroom, which is on the opposite side of the apartment near the front door. I shut the door and splashed some cold water on my face, trying to shake off the weird feeling. That's when I heard footsteps coming from the direction of my bedroom. My heart started racing. I quickly locked the bathroom door. The footsteps came all the way to just outside the bathroom, and then someone tried to open the door. I was so relieved I had locked it. A few seconds later, I heard my apartment's front door open and close. Then everything went silent. I stood in the bathroom for a few more minutes, trying to calm down and make sense of what had just happened. After I was sure it was safe, I slowly unlocked the bathroom door and went out. I locked the front door and searched the entire apartment to make sure whoever had been there was really gone. Thankfully, nobody else was inside. But when I went back to my bedroom, I noticed something chilling. The comforter that had been in the corner of the room was no longer there. It was now spread out in the middle of the room. I live by myself in an apartment, which is really close to downtown in a big city. There are lots of people in the area, but I've never witnessed anything crazy until recently. A few months ago, something happened that really shook me. It had been another long day at work. I love my job, but it can be very tiring. After walking home, I got into my apartment building and headed up to the 4th floor where my place is. I went inside, closed the door, and locked it, as I always do. I was ready to unwind, take a shower, put on some comfortable clothes, and go to bed. I had only made it about 10 feet from my front door when I heard the doorknob turning. Somebody was trying to get in. This was strange and had never happened before. I froze for a moment, then moved closer to the door and looked through the peephole into the hallway. Nobody was there. Whoever had tried to enter must have left. Maybe it was a mistake, or maybe it wasn't. Either way, I was really tired and just wanted to get on with my evening. About 20 minutes later, I was in bed, browsing on my phone before falling asleep. The apartment was dark and completely silent. Then I heard the doorknob turning again, this time, multiple times. There was no knock, but it was clear that whoever had tried earlier was back. I couldn't relax, knowing someone was trying to enter my apartment, so I got out of bed and tiptoed over to the door to look out again. This time, I saw a man standing right outside my door. I freaked out when I saw him. He looked sketchy, unkempt, and not well dressed. He was just standing there, looking at my door, and then he tried opening it again. He glanced around the hallway and back at my door, standing there for maybe a minute. Then he turned to the right and started walking away down the hallway toward the stairs and elevator. I waited for him to get a little further, then quietly opened my door and stepped out into the hallway. I wanted to make sure he was leaving so I could have peace of mind and get back to sleep. I saw him at a distance, almost at the end of the hall. But then he stopped, turned around, and saw me. Immediately, he started sprinting toward me. I rushed back into my apartment as fast as I could, slammed the door, and locked it. The man reached the door a second later and tried opening it again. When he realized it was locked, he pounded on the door a few times. I yelled through the door, asking what he wanted. He didn't answer, but he kept standing there. I watched him through the peephole as he tried opening the door again. I shouted that I was calling the police, and that's when he finally turned and left. Still, I wasn't convinced he was really gone. I stayed awake for about an hour, periodically checking the door, but he didn't return. Finally, I was able to go back to bed. I haven't seen the man since that night. Looking back, I think he might have followed me home from the street. I might have even let him into the building without realizing it. I wasn't paying close attention as I walked home. But now, I always do. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.